Welcome to Power Transmission class, Chapter 11 review. We're going to do a little bit more of a detailed review this time, and I will be quizzing you in the lab, and we will be scoring those quizzes about some of the content of the book. Now, my purpose of quizzing you on the book isn't to have you guys memorize the book, but it's to allow you guys to remember what's in the book and look it up quickly. So, A, there will be quizzes in the lab. B, you will need to bring your book into the lab with you. So please remember to do that. The book has got a lot of useful information, and they're not specifically for this lab coming up, but there are often sections in the book that are useful for the lab. Today we're going to be talking about pumps and compressors. In our lab, we are not going to be tearing apart any of our existing pumps, but we will be looking at some pumps in the lab, kind of along the side. It's not core to the lab, but we're going to be looking at pumps just to see what these physical parts look like. This particular chapter 11 talks about power transmission pumps and compressors primarily, which means they are primarily associated with hydraulics and pneumatics, and it only briefly mentions probably the most common pumps out in the field, which are centrifugal pumps, the ones that I discussed when I showed you this little washer with the little vanes that I drew on it. So in this particular chapter, we're going to focus on hydraulic and pneumatic style pumps and compressors. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit. So let's get into this a little bit. Now, just to say the objectives, I don't know that I need for you to list the pump types available, but you should know, based on the name of the pump, approximately how it works and should be able to explain how it works. I don't need you to calculate the volumetric efficiency. That's not important. And I don't need you to calculate the delivery of a pump. That's not important. The pump manufacturers will give you that information. We will be doing some exercises looking up the right size pump for the application, but other than that, you do not need to worry about this in your kind of real world scenario. However, we will be talking about common problems and troubleshooting pumps. And we're going to touch on compressors a little bit, and we're going to talk about troubleshooting compressors. And I've got some good stories about compressors that burned up in the lab and required everybody to exit the school because we had a lovely unexpected fire drill. Yeehaw. So hydraulic pumps primarily are positive displacement pumps. Positive displacement means that you're actually pushing fluid down the pump somehow, either with these little vanes or paddles, or through gears, or through an actual piston that's compressing and pushing that liquid down the line. So a positive displacement means I'm pushing some quantity of material using some means. And there's three basic styles of positive displacement pumps that we're going to talk about. The first one is the vane pump, or I like to call it the paddle wheel pump. The second type is the gear pump. And frankly, the gear pump, it is the cheapest and most common hydraulic pump out there. So we're going to spend more time on a basic gear pump than we are on the others. And the third type is a piston pump. Piston pumps are not only used for hydraulics, they tend to be the more expensive, higher pressure, better quality hydraulic pumps. They're also used in a variety of other applications. Anytime you have to go very high pressure, or you say you're moving a very thick liquid, a high viscosity liquid. So piston pumps are another kind of pump. So we're going to dive into each one of these. Firstly, the book talks about vane pumps and vane pumps. So what I'm going to do is share my screen for a second here. Hold on, let's get let's share my, okay, so I actually have a little presentation put together just to show you 3 different style pumps. And the first pump on the left here is called the vane pump. A vane pump, this is the side view, kind of a cutaway view. It's a real simple application. It's a paddle wheel. This wheel, it's got these little vanes or paddles stuck into it, and they just spin and push liquid. Now, the tricky part of this is if you just had a paddle straight snap, right in the center of this shaft, then the liquid would push all the way around. It would go in the inlet, push around the outside, and go back out the inlet. It wouldn't go anywhere. It certainly wouldn't apply pressure to the outlet. So to make it apply pressure to the outlet, they offset that rotor. They squish it further down into the bottom of the cavity, and they make these vanes spring loaded so that when the vane spins down to the outside, and let me just make myself a little bit of a dot here. See, you can see that dot pretty easily. So this is my dot showing me the icon where I want to point things. So as the vane squishes down to the backside of this pump system, it pushes into its slot. And then at the very bottom here, it's completely compressed by a little spring down into its slot. And then when it spins back up to the inlet, it starts popping out of its slot. It scoops up some liquid hydraulic oil and then pushes that hydraulic oil down the cavity until it creates a high pressure zone here at the outlet and squishes the hydraulic oil out the outlet. So it sucks it into the inlet, around the top, and squishes it out the outlet. That's a vane pump. This is not the most common pump, but it is certainly very common. And it's moderately expensive, but it gives you a really high quality, high pressure hydraulic pump system, and doesn't cost a fortune. It's a very good high quality hydraulic pump system. The book has a good sort of real picture of a vane pump, where you can see the vanes kind of in their slots with springs. There's a couple different kinds of vane pumps. One is called fixed displacement, and one is variable displacement. The variable one kind of changes up depending on how you can tension those inner vanes to allow more or less liquid through the pump system. That way you can set up the pump to run either more or less hydraulic pressure. And the book kind of goes through that. So let me flip back to the book view. All right. So the vane pumps are common and a little bit more expensive, but probably your most general purpose, high quality hydraulic pump out there. Gear pumps are more common, and they're also very low cost and highly durable. We have gear pumps in the lab. All right. If you pop open one of the lab gear pumps, you're going to find one of these deals in the lab. So it might be important to remember that if I were to say quiz you in the lab about what kind of pump we have. Hint, 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 hint. Let me see where we're at with timing. All right. Oh, I never started my timer. So let's stop recording.